Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.
My name is Beth Givens, and I'm the pastor at Wellborn United Methodist Church in Richmond, Virginia. In the wake of George Floyd's death and the rising conversations about race and policing in the United States, we at Wellborn, a predominantly white congregation, were looking for ways to have conversation about these issues, because understanding is the starting point for transformation. We decided that creating this podcast might be a good first step, especially after one of our small groups liked Emmanuel Acho's series, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, which I encourage you to also check out. So, thanks for joining us for this episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with Each Other about Race.
Emily, it is so good to see you after all this time apart. And thank you for joining in this conversation today as we continue to think about how it is that we have uncomfortable conversations with each other, or at the very least, conversations that are just hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Talk about race. So start by just, introducing yourself to folks who are listening. What decade of life are you in? Where'd you grow up? How long you've been around Wellborn?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Emily Knapp. I'm 30 years old this year. Well, as of last September. I grew up actually in the Baltimore, Maryland area, outside of Baltimore until college. And then I came down here for college at Randolph-Macon and stayed. I did 1 year in grad school up in Maryland again, and then moved back down here. So I've been here now for like 10 years. And Wellborn, I'd say like since membership, it's been a year now, but I had been coming for a couple years, but before that as well.
Yeah, awesome. And you're also connected with Old Wellborn. What's your connection there?
My husband, his grandmother was Ina Swank, and I know she and George were a big part of Wellborn, and so that was a really nice connection. That part of the reason that I ended up coming to Wellborn was because we had that connection. It drew me there.
That's awesome. And let's see, you're a teacher.
Yes.
By profession, in addition to being the mom of two very busy twin boys.
Yes.
So, and if you had to check a box on the census to say what your race is, what box would you check?
White, Caucasian.
Yeah, whatever the
white lady
term is.
Yeah.
So, do you have a story from your life about race that really sticks with you?
I have a couple of little stories. Being a white person, I have not experienced racism myself, but I have experiences just seeing it, and just my own experiences and how I just saw it and what I was thinking about race as I grew up and everything. So so first of all, pretty much I didn't have a lot of exposure to just issues of race, probably not until high school and college, and then even more in college and grad school. But where I grew up outside of Baltimore, the suburb that I grew up in, it was predominantly white. We had a Hispanic community there, and we had a Russian immigrant community, actually, a pretty big one there that my church growing up got involved in, trying to help immigrants, get themselves going, get started in society and everything. So, and so I think my first kind of exposure or experience with not necessarily even race, but also just people that were less privileged than me is my parents what we actually kind of became friends with a Russian immigrant family. I'll never forget their names. Sasha and Olga were the parents' names, and they had two little girls who were a little bit older than me. But we would actually go over their apartment and like bring them food and hang out. And I remember seeing, you know, how they lived versus how I lived, and that was kind of my first exposure to like, wow, I'm really lucky, like recognizing how much I had back then. I think that was a good place to start because I feel like a lot of people don't get that comparison, you know, to see how other people live, or people are less fortunate or less privileged than they are. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think I only had a couple of Black kids in my school. Two, actually. I went to a small Catholic school, so we didn't have many kids, but only two of them were Black. Wow. And I remember just thinking, like, there are only two. Like, why are there only two? You know, that's pretty much the only thought I remember having. I remember then in high school, I went to a all-girls Catholic school, but it was in Baltimore. So then it was a more diverse school, like big time. I think I'd say maybe almost 25% African American in I don't know if the whole school or my class, but so that was probably my first time just seeing more differences, and I remember not thinking a lot of it, but that at lunch, I noticed that all the white girls sat together and then all the Black girls sat together. And it was kind of like this self-segregated thing. And I remember thinking that was a little bit weird. But by the end of high school, everybody kind of started to intermingle as everybody became part of, you know, athletic teams and groups and things. And then it wasn't so segregated. But I remember being like, this is weird. And why is this?
Yeah.
And then college, just, you know, taking classes, becoming educated, talking to more people of different backgrounds, making friends of different backgrounds. It just started to open my eyes to actual race issues. Growing up, never heard anybody being like openly or blatantly racist. Like I've never heard anybody use the N-word or say negative things. I'm sure things seeped in there just from society. You know, I know I've got biases just because we all do. Yeah. But I remember once I moved down to Virginia, I remember hearing the first actually like openly racist thing, and it was so jarring and shocking. And
do you remember exactly what it was?
I remember exactly. Yeah. So I guess this is probably one of my stories.
Yeah.
Stories. We were out to eat with a group of friends, Justin's high school friends, and one of his friends' wives. We were eating at Buffalo Wild Wings, and a African American family walked in, and I remember her saying, "Oh, it just got really dark in here." And I was just so like, my stomach like flipped over, you know, and I was just like, what? That was the first time I'd ever heard just an openly racist comment. And I remember then like looking at, you know, everybody else at the table and to see if they were looking as shocked or feeling as shocked as I was. And they all just kind of like laughed it off and moved on. And I remember saying to Justin afterwards, like, oh my God, I cannot believe she said that. Did you hear that? And he was like not shocked at all. He's like, I hear stuff like that all the time. And I'm like, really? What? Like, so awful. Like, why are we even pointing out that it doesn't matter, you know?
Right.
Family can eat there too. So anyway, that was probably my first experience with that.
And in some ways I wouldn't necessarily think that you and Justin grew up very differently, right?
Right.
Similar age. Everything you've described, I think, would be similar about his experience, but it was different.
It was different, yeah.
And, you know, just kind of naming how different communities or even different neighborhoods, I think,
yes,
treat race is important.
Yeah, I feel like, looking back now, my community growing up probably was colorblind. We just didn't talk about it. I didn't hear anything blatantly racist, but we didn't talk about race at all.
Right.
And then areas of the South, it's more, I don't know, typical to hear stuff like that, and that just was like, what?
Right.
So
And let me pick up on that colorblind comment, because that's one of the things we asked is, that's something that we say, that I say, I'm not racist, I'm colorblind. I don't see race. How do you react to that now?
Well, I feel like I even have a memory from my childhood of being told that we should be colorblind. Just don't see color, everybody's the same. And I think that comes from a place of good intention, but then after, especially in grad school, to become a teacher, we had to take 2 courses actually on inclusion and diversity in the classroom. And so we were taught all about, terms like that. And it just like was so eye-opening, because it was like, we can't, you're right. We can't be colorblind. We can't pretend that that there aren't different kinds of people with different kinds of backgrounds. Like it's a good thing that we're different. Like
Right.
we don't have to pretend like we're all the same. Okay. As long as you're not implying that one type of person is better than another type of person, you don't want to be colorblind. You want to acknowledge the differences, and celebrate them and talk about them and talk about possibly the inequalities that are there and the inequities, so that you can fix them. So after learning about that, and then kind of applying it to my classroom and also seeing some of the stuff in my classroom, it just makes no sense to try to be colorblind. And I remember many instances of like my students, we would be reading a book or something, and I would say, so-and-so, this is a Black woman, and blah, 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 blah. And they would be like, oh, you're racist. And it was like, no, you can point out that someone's white, that someone's Black, that someone's Hispanic. It's not being racist. If I was implying somehow that was bad, or that there was a, if I was saying that they were not as good as the white characters or something, then it would be racist. But so yeah, that's kind of my take on color.
That brought up another question for me. And I know you can't speak about any of the students you teach directly, but you've been an educator in public school and in private school here in Richmond. What's been the kind of the makeup of your classrooms? I mean, what's your experience as a teacher?
So when I was student teaching so I was in like Silver Spring, Maryland area, so outside of DC, it was majority Hispanic actually at that school. And then I'd say then out of what was left, it was majority Black. There weren't very many white kids at that school. Then down here, I taught it here in Henrico County, and it was, more mixed than some schools, but still majority white. And then my current school, I'd say still majority white at the school I teach at now. So so I kind of have had a couple different experiences, but most of my experience has been with majority white kids.
And then so part of your role as an educator for those children is to help move them beyond colorblindness.
Exactly. And I've tried, I teach English. Well, I teach reading now, but I've taught English for most of my teaching career. And so, of course, a good way to do that is through books. So, we would read, one of my favorite books to teach was Lizzie Bright and the Buckminster Boy, by Barry Schmidt. And it's about a friendship between this little white boy who's the son of a pastor in this little town up in Maine, and then a little Black girl that lives on an island nearby that her and her family have lived on for generations, like since the end of slavery.
Wow.
And of course, everybody in the town is super racist and doesn't like Lizzie hanging around. And so the boy, has to kind of, learn and defend his friendship, and he learns about racism and how it's bad and all this. Anyway, it was a really good way to teach a lot of that to our kids.
So what age group is that one for? Middle school?
Middle school, yeah, that's
Okay, so we could put that, I mean, we could also then put that on an adult reading list.
Oh, that's such a good book.
Books
Yes.
suggested by well-born folks to well-born folks.
Yes.
All right, good. We'll curate that. Excellent. I love it. So you've mentioned the word privilege a couple times so far, but when somebody says white privilege to you, what do you think of, and also what emotions do you feel?
I think of me because I have white privilege and I know that.
Talk about that. I mean, how do you name that? I think that's something when I have said to other people, well, I've got white privilege, they kind of look at me. I mean, how would you, they look at me strangely.
Right.
How would you talk about your white privilege?
So the most basic way that I've talked about it with people who are asking me about it is like, okay, we all have problems in our lives. We all have struggles, things we deal with and everything. But one of my struggles is not the color of my skin, or is not caused by the color of my skin. My whiteness gives me immunity from a lot of the problems that people of color face. And for me, like, I know that, like, for instance, my family, we were able to, my grandparents and their parents were able to buy homes here in America and build wealth. And Justin's family was too, and his grandmother was able to own a home and then, gift it partially to us. And we were able, and that, to then, fix it up and resell it and make money and build wealth. And I know that a lot of people can't do that. And I recognize how lucky I am that I can do that. And just because of, I know our, housing system and inequalities in the system, in our housing system, a lot of Black families have not been able to buy and own a home, and so then they can't pass wealth on. So I see that example so clear in my life. Like, this is what I'm able to do because my ancestors were white and were allowed to buy homes, and therefore I can accumulate wealth, and therefore I can have this house and do well, and others couldn't because of the color of their skin. They were, the redlining and just being not given loans and all that stuff, so that they couldn't purchase homes and build wealth. That's just, one big example I see in my life of my white privilege.
That is a big one. You're right. Same thing.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel?
It makes lucky, and also, a little guilty sometimes, because it's like I have these things through not I mean, I know tons of people that work just as hard as me or harder, and they don't have these things, so I feel like it's not fair. It's not fair. And I feel like that I can have these things just because my family was able to accumulate wealth because they're white, So a little bit of guilt.
Or discomfort, or and so what's, as a person of faith, like, what's your response to that? What can we do?
I feel like what we can do is to try to illuminate others about the fact that they are privileged, for one, and then take some of our privilege and use it for good, to try to help others that don't have as much, or that couldn't have as much, to try to give back, use some of our privilege to benefit others.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
Are you ever worried, and this is a worry that I confess that I have, are you ever worried about getting it wrong?
Yeah. um, Definitely. Though recently, I feel like I've become more brave about that than before. Just because I just feel like I accept that I'm probably going to say stuff wrong sometimes. I might say something that offends somebody, or somebody takes something that I say incorrectly, but I feel like I'm willing to take that risk now because I really just feel like I have to stand up for what I believe is right.
Yeah.
And staying silent will be worse than getting it wrong. And you know, I'm okay if somebody says to me, hey, that was not the right way to say that, or that wasn't okay, or did you mean this? I feel like I'm open to learning and growing. And even just with time and maturity, now I think, as opposed to me in my like early 20s or teens, I just have more confidence in, I just need to say it if I believe it. And if I'm wrong, someone will correct me, but that's okay, because like I said, I think staying silent would be worse.
Yeah. It's sometimes hard to choose between
Yeah.
getting it wrong or being quiet. And
Right.
We all have to make different choices about that,
Right.
but it is a hard choice sometimes.
Yeah. I think there's a song in the musical Avenue Q, Everybody's a Little Bit Racist.
Yes.
And I always just try to keep that in mind because I honestly think it's true. We all have biases. And so I think I think we have to just be willing to have conversations and say things, and as long as we can acknowledge when we have said something wrong, or thought about something the wrong way, or if we can acknowledge that bias that we might have, if you know that it's there, if you acknowledge it, and then you could work to try to correct it, that's the only way that we can grow and learn and get away from those biases.
And in part, that's also going to require a shift in how we talk to each other. Instead of talking in an adversarial way, to talk in a looking for the right word, in a to have Christian conferencing and
Right.
to approach each other in love,
An empathetic way instead of confrontational, or
yeah. So do you think that talking about race prevents unity and maintains that kind of confrontational division in our culture, or do you think that it can help move us toward healing?
So I've seen a lot of people talking about how, oh, this talk about race is just dividing us even more. And I've definitely seen that argument. And I guess my take on it is that, when something is broken, like if a house has a bunch of structural issues, sometimes it's easier, better, safer to dismantle the whole thing and put it back together, build it new. And that's how I feel about, I guess, our society right now and our systems, and that we have to confront this right now. We have to possibly take it all down, take the monuments down, whatever we need to do to create healing and build it up better. So maybe right now we are feeling divided because people obviously have different opinions on these things. And so, yeah, it's dividing us in a way, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I think that as long as, like you said, if we can continue to have Christian empathetic conversations about our differences, then we don't have to let it divide us to a point where, we're just hating each other. I feel like I will keep trying to have conversations with people who think differently than me, and I'm not going to resort to name calling. I'm not going to resort to, hating them, or I want to hear what they say. And I feel like if everybody could take an approach that's similar, then ultimately, we can fix these things and bring everybody together. But I think that ultimately all these conversations can bring us together instead of dividing us.
The question is, will they? Will we lean into them enough so that that they will bring us together? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And hopefully they will.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining me today.
We're so glad you've joined us for this episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with Each Other about race. We hope this conversation has made you think, and we invite you to pray about the questions it raises for you. We hope you'll join us next week for another episode. If you would like to participate in a future episode, please contact us at Wellborn. I leave you with this Franciscan benediction. May God bless you with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you may live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, hunger, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and to turn their pain to joy. And may God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in this world, so that you can do what others claim cannot be done, to bring justice and kindness to all our children and the poor. Amen.